I liked Fatal Frame 1 and loved Fatal Frame 2, but was a little nervous about Fatal Frame 3. After what happened with the Silent Hill games, I was worried that Fatal Frame would follow the same pattern, where the first game was flawed but good, the second game was great, and the third one was good, but ultimately felt like a step backwards. And unfortunately, Fatal Frame 3 The Tormented does pretty much that. You play as Rei Kurosawa, a professional photographer who is recovering from the death of her fiancé, which was caused by her reckless driving, so as well as grief, she is also haunted by guilt. One night, after taking pictures in an abandoned house, she begins having a strange reoccurring dream where she finds herself in a haunted location called the Manor of Sleep. She discovers that other people are having similar dreams and that the effects of the dreams seem to be seeping into the real world. And so she begins investigating in both the real world and the dream world to try to get to the bottom of things. As I said, it has a strong start. The premise is intriguing, and it kind of reminds me of Silent Hill 4, where the apartment or house acts as the hub area, and the bulk of the game takes place in a nightmare world. Though Silent Hill 4 does a much better job of actually making you feel trapped, since you're alone and unable to leave. But Fatal Frame 3 still does a good job of building a tense, lonely atmosphere. Like in the previous games, you have to fight off ghosts with a special camera, and the nerve-wracking encounters with the ghosts are as scary as ever. The overall atmosphere of the game is also very chilling and effective. So if you liked the first two Fatal Frame games, this one is definitely worth checking out. But it does have problems. In order to really get the most out of this game, you pretty much have to have played the first two games. While the first two games were self-contained stories, 3 continues the stories from the first two, with characters and events from them being referenced and playing important roles in 3's storyline. If you didn't play the first two games, you'll have a harder time understanding what's going on, and you won't have the same attachment to the characters. It's the same problem as in Silent Hill 3. A little reference to the older games here and there is fine, but Silent Hill 3 and Fatal Frame 3 both end up being a bit too indulgent. But the biggest issue for me is that the game is so slow. When it comes to the Fatal Frame games, they have this bad habit of forcing the player to run all around the map until they finally figure out what the game wants them to do in order to make progress. However, in the first two games, the areas you had to explore were generally not too big, so even if the solution to a problem was rather obscure, it wouldn't take you too long to find it, so this annoying aspect of the games was tolerable. Still, one would hope that this problem would be ironed out eventually. But not only is this issue not ironed out in 3, it's made worse, as the Manor of Sleep is fairly big, and you revisit many of the same areas again and again. The mansion changes slightly each night, and oftentimes to unlock the way forward you need to defeat a ghost. Except you don't know that, and even if you do know that, you'll often have no idea where the ghost is, so you have to comb the entire map until you find it. At which point you'll make a little more progress before you inevitably have to repeat the process all over again. It's tedious, it's annoying, and it's boring. And yes, you can always look up what to do online, but ideally, a game will keep the number of times you have to do that to a minimum. And if you're constantly having to do that in order to make progress without wandering around lost for hours, the game has failed to be intuitive and engaging. Plus, looking up the answers sucks the fun out of a game, so if a game forces you to resort to that, that's a problem. The game has a lot of interesting ideas, and the core of what makes Fatal Frame good is still here, but when I'm constantly feeling bored and having to force myself to continue, that's a bad sign. While I have a number of issues with Silent Hill 3, it was never boring, and there are several aspects about it that are even better than Silent Hill 2. Fatal Frame 3, though, ends up being a bit dull, and I can't really think of any areas where it's better than Fatal Frame 2. There are some neat ideas here, especially if you can stick with it to the end, but for me there was way too much trough and not enough peak. As I said, it is a good game, and you should play it if you liked the first two Fatal Frame games. But if you want something truly new or different, you won't really find it here. And if you didn't like the first two games, this is a definite skip. My final score is a 7 out of 10. Little disappointing, but still better than a lot of other horror games for the PS2. So what do you think? Have you played the Fatal Frame games? Which one was your favorite? Unsurprisingly, my favorite is still Crimson Butterfly. Whatever you think, be sure to let me know in the comments below. If you like what I do, feel free to subscribe and follow me on Twitter. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.